Dr. Miller.
Okay, all right, here we are. Sorry for the technical difficulties that we were having just a few moments ago. Let me say hello to all of our social media families, to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, and each and every one of you. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is truly wealth. Of course, this program is for informational purposes only, and we thank you guys for being here with us on this evening. Once again, what night is it tonight? It's Monday night, and it is Couch Conversations with the doctors. We are here on tonight, so we're going to ask you to share this information with all of your friends. We're going to get started and we're going to go around the panel really quickly. We're going to introduce our colleagues that are here with us on today. We see our colleagues. Graham, why don't you give us a big introduction about yourself? And you're muted, Doug. There we go.
Thank you, Nikki. Just got off the mute. I'm a retired physician. I worked in the Chicago area for about 30 years. A year ago, I joined Representative Davison's office as a congressional fellow. I'll try and answer your questions if I can. It's a real honor to be here. Thank you.
That is wonderful. I see my good girlfriend chiming in over here. Melanie Winston, my good friend. Thanks, Melanie, for being here. She says good evening to all. To Sister Bonnie, who is here. Hey, Sister Bonnie, how are you? And I see others are checking in just as well. Pete, Dr. Pete Thomas. Pete Thomas, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that's here?
Hey, guys, I'm Dr. Pete. I am a general internist and the Director of Medical Support Services at Near North. Happy to be here. Hopefully answer some questions for you guys.
Wonderful. Simply outstanding. I see Dr. James Miller is here, and he's here just on an ask, not because he was threatened. Dr. Miller.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. James Miller. I'm a retired internist, currently involved with healthcare teaching and trying to improve healthcare in the community. So I'm here tonight to participate in this conversation. Hopefully we'll be able to provide information and some data that will be helpful to you.
Wonderful. I see Curtis Jones has chimed in and he said, good evening to everyone. Hey, Curtis, how are you? Is that, I see, is that Dr. Terry Mason? I see that. Dr. Mason, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Wonderful, Nikki. How are you this evening?
I'm great. Why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that's here?
Sure. I'm Dr. Terry Mason, retired urologist and retired administrator from a bunch of different jobs. But I'm really here to be an advocate for everyone in our community and give and hopefully arm you with the information that you can use to make better decisions about how you choose to live your life and empower you with the facts, not our opinions, but the facts on what we know about how what we do impacts on how well and how long we live. And I thank Congressman Davis for this opportunity.
All right, Dr. Mason. All right. I see Leanne Harris is here. Hey, Leanne. To Linda Johnson, who is here, who says, good evening, everyone. Welcome back, Dr. Jasmine. That takes us right to Dr. Jasmine. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Absolutely. Happy. Oh my God. This is hump day for us all. It's always a pleasure to serve on this panel with many privileged doctors in the metro Chicago area, making a big difference in the state of Illinois. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I am within the integrated behavioral medicine component at Near North Health Service Corporation, and I'm happy to be here. So.
Absolutely outstanding. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Super Weight Loss Doctor that's here with us on this evening. Dr. Tony Hampton, why don't you give us an introduction of yourself?
Thank you, Nikki. I am so happy to be tonight, guys. Always excited to help, share. I think we all had a wonderful weekend celebrating our moms. I want to do a shout out to all the moms today. Really enjoyed that. So, board certified obesity medicine family doctors, very interested in helping people understand the simple secrets to being healthy, and it's not that complicated. So happy to be here, guys.
Outstanding. I see Nellie is here. Nellie King is here. And also Mary Ballinger. She says, good evening to everyone. And of course, oh, Lorenzo Burton just stopped in. Hey, Lorenzo, great that you are here with us. He says, good evening, everyone. As he shares health is wealth with our men who he services on every day. So, Lorenzo, thank you for being here with us on today. To the man who makes this possible, to the vanguard on healthcare, to the congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, our very own congressman, that's Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, let me just suggest that if I had, say, about 50,000 extra dollars, I'd just give it to all the people from the Near North Health Corporation who volunteered this weekend. And we had a wonderful, wonderful time at the CoMed Health Center on Sunday, even though it was kind of chilly and it rained a little bit. And they were there from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. And, you know, Miss Bernice Mills Thomas is just the top of the line when it comes to management and being an executive. So I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to all of them, and especially all of those who volunteered with us on Sunday. Today was a big health day in Chicago. As a matter of fact, there were two outstanding press conferences this morning that I was able to attend. One was at the West Suburban Hospital, where the Illinois Black Legislative Group, along with the governor of the state, had a big announcement about what they had been able to do in the way of passing legislation that provides opportunities to try and bridge the gap between affluent communities and those that are more disadvantaged, and especially African American or Black communities. So I want to commend the co-chair of the Health Pillars, State Representative Camille Lilly and State Senator Matty Hunter, but the whole group who had worked on putting all of this together. And as I said at the press conference, if they didn't have a governor who would sign into law the work that they had done, then it would not have the same impact. And so I commend the governor and all of them. I dashed away from there, trying to get down to Rush, where Dr. David Ansel and all of the bosses over at Rush were kind of enjoying themselves because the BMO Financial Group laid $10 million on them and to help with their health equity program. And even if you rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Medical Center, $10 million is going to help you some. I know that ain't much for some places, but 10 million is still 10 million. So they were the recipients of this grant this morning, and I'm sure they're going to make great use of it, and they're going to use it to expand their health equality activity, trying to demonstrate that health and economic development can go together, and that when you merge the two, you are more likely to improve health status than if you only dealing with one. So it's been a good week, good weekend. Mother's Day came and went, but Mother's Day never goes. Every day, I never will forget my mother, and we can get on. But my mother was telling me that her girlfriend's daughter had sent her a Mother's Day gift. And she said, Miss Ivor told me that Geraldine had sent her just a wonderful gift for Mother's Day. And she was just showing it off. And she asked, what did Danny send you for Mother's Day? And my mother said, I told her every day with you was Mother's Day. And I said, what you want? Here, whatever it is, just say it. Because you know how to disarm a guy. So every day is still Mother's Day with me. And let's get it on.
Simply fantastic. Well, Dorothy Murphy is here, and she says hello to everyone just as well. You know, we had a number of questions from last week, and a couple of the questions that got a lot of hits behind it was, one, why is stress eating such a large issue? So I don't know which one of you want to answer that question to start with.
It's absolutely, I can say before, I think Dr. Hampton was going to start, it definitely is a mind and body connection when we think about stress, we think about eating, but I'll definitely let one of the doctors, the MDs, start with the biological or physiological perspective, and then I'll perhaps talk about the mental health aspect of it.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's definitely both physical and emotional. I think a lot of patients, in fact, I would argue that now, fortunately, as a family doctor, I was trained to deal with some mental issues. And that's one of the beauties of family medicine, is that you cover the whole spectrum because you got to deal with everything. But when I talk to patients, sometimes they're trying to distinguish, is there, am I really hungry or is it a stress hunger, right? Or I really call it an emotional eating situation. So what I tell them is if you suddenly develop symptoms, it probably was stress and not physical. It probably was emotional. Because usually when you're physically hungry, you're going to have an empty stomach. You may feel moody, tired, things like that. But a lot of times with, emotional eating, there's really no physical symptoms at all. I always tell my kids, if you're hungry, you'll eat a boiled egg, right? If you're stress eating, you want a slice of cake. So a lot of times, if you're willing to just eat food, you're probably physically hungry. If you're emotionally hungry, you're looking for something sugary, something salty, things that we crave. And the last thing I'll say about it is, if I'm satisfied after I eat, then I'm probably physically hungry. But if I'm feeling bad after I ate, or regretting, or feeling bad about what I just ate, it's probably stress. So a lot of it is your body will tell you if you can. I mean, obviously you're not thinking like a clinician, but your body will tell you what it is. And I think the biggest test is, if I'll eat a boiled egg versus a slice of cake, you can tell the difference. So I'm just going to stop there, and I'll let Dr. Jasmine or any other Dr. Pete want to chime in.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Jasmine, let me say something before you go. So from a physiological perspective, there are certain things called stress hormones that get secreted, and those stress hormones alert your body that you're in trouble, right? So this is a evolutionary survival technique that your body says you're in trouble if you're being chased by a lion, or you're in trouble if you're in fear of losing your job, or you're in fear of COVID. And so many times we seek food that causes for certain neurotransmitters to get secreted that make us feel more calm or more comfortable, right? And so picture if you're being chased by a lion and you need energy to get out of the way of that lion, you're going to seek the foods that's going to cause a high sugar rush. So that's what Dr. Hampton was saying. And so if a hard-boiled egg, it doesn't have a whole lot of sugar in it, right? And so you're not seeking that. When you're in trouble, you're going through a lot of stress, you want a food that's going to, or your body is seeking something that's going to cause a sugar rush. Now, never mind, it's make-believe, right? Because there's really not a lion, right? And the sugar rush you're getting is going to be gone in a matter of minutes. But your body just knows it wants something to have that serotonin level to go up really, really quickly. So that I'll leave it like that. But I'll also mention from my public health side says, some of our communities is under constant stress. So sometimes we're not even aware that we're stressed. It's so normal for us. And rather you call that stress COVID, or if you call that stress what's the ComEd, right? People's gas. That stress is so normal to us. And so we find ourselves seeking these foods without even understanding why. So I try to help my patients by saying, look, go get a glass of water first, before you think that you're really hungry, But ultimately, I think I'm going to lead this to Dr. Jasmine, and that is you're going to have to find a way to manage that stress. First, be aware of it, then two, to manage it. Dr. Jasmine, tell them how to manage it.
Those are actually great. Everything, I think, Dr. Pete and Dr. Hampton, you were on point. Another thing that I add when patients come to me after they think that they've been referred just because, or my provider said I need to speak with you, is that I ask questions specifically regarding in the past 14 days, have you had a limited appetite? Have you felt like you've overeaten, right? That's data for me. But also, have we lost weight in the midst of these 14 days or a month? Have we gained weight, right? And then I tie that in because oftentimes when I hear a client or a patient say, hey, I'm an emotional eater or I've been stressed, right? Sometimes they could be overeating, whether it's hormonal, whether it's stress, whether it's to feel better about themselves. One thing that I suggest is keeping a log, right, via your phone, whether it's on an app or a log or a journal, to see what days are there particular times or themes that are coming up when we thinking about eating, right, and gaining weight. So I think that added on to Dr. Pete and Dr. Hampton would be vital as far as when we think about stress management, specifically talking about emotional eating. So,
yeah, the other thing I'll add to that is that the issue of hunger isn't really an issue. When we are eating because of stress, we never get full, because the problem is that we're trying to solve a discomfort that is in our system, but food will not solve that issue. So we tend to just eat, and we're looking for something to make us feel better. But the problem is that there's an issue that we need to resolve, and that will make us feel better. It doesn't make it a different how you could eat all day. It's not going to solve the stress. Therefore, the eating is not going to. So you'll feel that I'm hungry all the time. I'm just eating, and I'm still not getting full. It's not getting full. It's not getting satisfied. That's the problem, and because you're not eating for the right reason. So that's the big thing about stress eating, that you eat. Not because you're hungry, but because of you're looking for some satisfaction that you can't get in food.
Which then could lead to an addiction if we think about sugar, or depending on what types of foods we're eating. But that's a whole different topic from there. So,
I guess.
Or is it?
So, I mean, you got it, Dr. Jasmine. We're gonna add it, but because it's so connected, and again, there is a such thing as a processed food addiction. There is such a thing as a sugar addiction. So if you struggle, rather it's emotional or because you got it on the counter. I grew up where you had a slight, you had a cake on the counter as a general rule. That's just how we grew up. But if you have a processed food addiction, you're in trouble if that's your household. So I think for anybody who's not sure, they have ways, they use the same criteria they use for alcohol addiction. There's like 11 questions you would ask yourself, and Dr. Joan Iflin with the Reset community, they can help you. They got websites. I did an interview with her, so you can search my name and Dr. Joan Iflin, Ifland, and we did a whole video, and she went through every step. And then, so if that's you, you may need help, just like the alcoholic who needs to go to the AAA meeting. You need support and help. And guess what? It may be a lifelong addiction because the nerve cells, the neurons in your brain that actually speak to addiction, you can suppress them and you can redirect them, but they usually don't go away for the rest of your life. So you have to kind of keep going back and telling them, no, I don't want you to, it's like, I'm not letting you do it this time. You have to constantly fight that battle. So there are resources out there. You're not alone, and it's not that uncommon to have problems like
this. And to my colleague's point, that the brain in any sort of addiction gets addicted to this neurotransmitter called GABA. And so the brain wants more and more. It's the risk versus reward. And the risk part of your brain goes down. And so you're not thinking about weight gain, diabetes, hypertension, heart failure. You're thinking sugar surge, sugar surge, sugar surge. And it's the same thing that, for Dr. Jasmine and I, we treat our opioid patients. Their risk versus reward, that brain gets hardwired to want more of that hormone.
Well, so Pete, I really agree with you. Jasmine said that's a different conversation, but is it? Melanie Winston says, this is so good. I hate grabbing that bag of salt and vinegar chips at night. I just want to switch to fruit cups. I just switched to fruit cups. Let me fix that. I just switched to fruit cups. All right. That's what I'm drinking the water. I drink the water. I drink the water.
Not the fruit cup with the syrup.
Oh.
Right. That's just trading one drug for the next.
So the fruit cup has syrup? Oh.
And we got to remember.
And it depends if it's processed, right? Depending on if the fruit cut. I mean, there's so many layers to this. I get where she's going. I mean, obviously it's healthier, but it's, just thinking about the process piece of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And we got to remember too that these things, though may be episodic, can be serial. And as we go, we actually get worse. We don't get better if we don't interrupt it in some sort of way. And if we add, and there are other things, but certainly certain sugars do trigger certain neurotransmitters in the brain that give us pleasure. And so the same pleasure as some of the illegal drugs do from one point of view. Mm-hmm. So it really does become a real issue because these things are triggered. And unfortunately, the more you trigger them, the more they want, the more you want of it. So it's a real issue, and I think not to be taken lightly. And I'm grateful that my colleagues have taken this question and the answer very seriously.
Great. So Stephen actually shares that fruit cup conversation. He shares that. I think we kind of answered part 2 of that question when they asked, why can't we control it? And I just heard Dr. Mason talking about the neurotransmitters, and I heard Dr. Jasmine talking about why we couldn't control it and how we need to work on that and some of the treatments behind it. But then they asked, how does intermittent fasting really work? How does that work?
Okay, I'll speak to that a little bit since I actually just had Dr. Jason Fung, Fung, wrote the book on fasting. He's in Canada. He's probably the most famous person in the world who deals with intermittent fasting. So I had a great interview with him, and basically all it is eating plan where you eat, for a certain period and you fast. And the problem with America uh, is that in America, Bernie, what's his name? What's that comedian? I think I'm thinking of his name, Bernie Mac. He would say, America, we eat constantly, and that's the problem. We don't. In the previous cultures, the hunters and gatherers, they didn't eat constantly. So we need to take a break from eating, and when we, break our fast, we think about breakfast, but we need to stretch that out. So for me personally, I do a 16-8 fast, and all that means is that I have 8 hours that I eat, and I have 16 hours that I fast. And during those fasting hours, I tend to drink water, tea, coffee, chicken broth, prawn broth. I try to drink something that doesn't have sugar in it. Some people just do a 24-hour fast. Some people do a 5-2 diet where they eat like 600 calories for 2 days, 9 consecutive days out of the week, and then they eat normally. They have a warrior fast where you just give yourself a 4-hour eating window. But the bottom line is that anytime you change from eating all the time to just restricting your eating, that's a fast. Now, what are the benefits? Well, when you fast, ironically, you increase. A lot of people think when you fast, you're going to lose muscle. You really don't. You actually increase your growth hormone, and you decrease your fat loss. So you burn more fat, and you actually preserve. Your body's very smart. Your body's not going to store fat, which is your stored energy, and then burn muscle when you fast. That wouldn't even make sense. So your body's smart enough to burn the fat first. It also makes, so if you're diabetic when you fast, you got to do it, under supervision. You increase your ability, your insulin works better. And I think it works better because your pancreas, which makes insulin, it's gonna get some rest, because when you're fasting, the pancreas is chilling. So when it finally starts to work, the pancreas is gonna work better, so the insulin works better. A lot of times when you're fasting, you have something called autophagy occurs. That's when the old cells are removed and replaced with new cells. Why is that important? Well, it's important because cancer tends to occur when your cells get older and they're not working as well. Then they start growing into things. So when you fast, you have the benefit of that. That people tend to live longer. They have decreased inflammation, mental clarity. I have 2 college age and graduate school boys that've never done better in school when they started fasting. The thing that's the weirdest about fasting, that's going to speak to our last conversation, which won't make sense. And I'm not suggesting that a person who has, all of these emotional things to fast, that may be a bad time to do it. But there's 2 things that happen when you restrict calories. When you restrict calories, you get hungry because your hunger hormone goes up, and your satiety hormone, which tells you you're full, goes down. So now you're hungrier and you're not feeling full. So that's when you restrict calories. And the other thing that happens is that your metabolism slows down. That's why a lot of people who keep gaining and losing and gaining and losing, every time they lose weight, their metabolism slows down. Then they gain weight because they stop, their diet. And then their metabolism never goes back up. So now they're going to gain. They're going to be bigger than they were before they start dieting. The beauty of intermittent fasting is that it sounds crazy, but it actually reduces your hunger. Now, it doesn't do it immediately. So let's just say you start fasting today. You're going to get hungry at lunchtime like you normally do. But if you remember, everybody's been in a situation where they couldn't get to the food, and an hour or so after you ate, you stop thinking about food. So what happens is the point at which your hunger is going to be high at first, and then you try the next day, and you're still going to get hungry around lunchtime the next day, but it's not going to be as hungry as you were the previous day. And then every day you do it, it gets to a point where you didn't even know lunchtime was here. So when you do intermittent fasting, you have less hunger, and the most important thing is that your metabolism don't go down; it actually goes up. So now you're not hungry, and you have a higher metabolism, and you're going to burn more fat. So for people So what I tell people when they're going on, when I encourage a low carb diet, I say do that first, because a low carb diet is going to start training your body to burn fat for fuel, which is what happens when you're fasting, right? And then by the time you get to the fasting point, you've already kind of eased into, your body's kind of adapted. So it's pretty easy at that point. So intermittent fasting for a lot of people is a very effective way to be healthy. And it's also a way to just kind of challenge your body and test it and kind of make it. Sometimes when you challenge your body, it gets stronger. So I really encourage anybody who haven't tried it to ease into it. But you don't have to get to the, you can eat. You can say, well, I'm usually eating breakfast at 7. Maybe the next day it goes to 8, then it goes to 9. You know, you kind of ease into it, and over time you'll be.
So, Dr.
I would just add to that. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete.
No. Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that it's interesting we come up with new terms for old things. That's what going to sleep was about. That was, we're just in a situation now where we have to create these other constructs to override the insanity that we've been programmed to do. So if we just, that's why they call that first meal in the morning break fast, because that's when you break your overnight fast. Now, yeah, you could do it longer periods of time and things of that nature, but the key is that there are many opportunities for us to stop eating so much. The problem is we've been programmed to just eat all day. We don't fast at all. So this is the problem. And unfortunately, the way that when we're looking at now, we have with these things here, we've got 24/7 access to media. And if you look at some of the top things that are advertised in media, food is among those top things. And the fact that you can wake up at 2:00 in the morning and have somebody bring you in a car a burger or whatever it is you choose to eat is not normal. That's not normal. And if we were eating the right things that we need to eat, we wouldn't have these cravings, or we wouldn't be tempted by the suggestion of these foods to act upon those cravings. So if we went to bed at night and slept all night, slept at least 7 or 8 hours, that's a fast. And you break that fast with what you eat in the morning. And we should be fasting even 4 hours or more during the day. So if we added up 2 4-hour periods during the day, plus the 8 hours at night, that's 16 hours that we didn't eat or not eating anything other than if you want to drink water. So I'm maybe oversimplifying it, but I do want to go back to understanding that these terms that people are coming out writing books about and doing things are not necessarily as new as they appear to be.
Yeah, I think to your point, Dr. Mason, that I think we're finding solid data that there are, physiological benefits to the things that we used to do, right? So there was a time in which the average person was not sleep deprived, and that they weren't getting up at all times of the night and looking at their phone, and then as a result of that, going to get some juice out of the refrigerator. So no longer do you have a fast going on, and so now we have the data to support getting that good night's rest, not eating until 11 or 12 in the afternoon, or that being your breakfast. So those things help to sensitize insulin receptors, which causes what Dr. Hampton said, makes the insulin work better. As a result of that, your blood sugar goes down. So now we have the data to support that those are things that actually help you lose weight, feel younger, look younger, have your cells become more less susceptible to mutations like cancer. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and Tony, I wanted you to touch on this. So this is kind of counterintuitive to what that we used to be taught in med school in nutrition, that they wanted you to eat every 3 hours or something like that, right? So never mind that we had 2 weeks worth of worth of nutrition, and then on top of that, they told us something wrong.
You know, that was interesting. You know, as you guys, okay.
Go ahead.
You know, as you were talking about that, I thought about that, Dr. Pete. I said, you know, all these years, even nutrition, if I got a coach, every 3 hours you need to be eating a cup of almonds or this or that. And now I'm listening and I'm like, I need to jump on this to see what I may be able to get more of. So I would just be interested to hear your take. And I don't know if anyone in the audience, what would be the difference between the intermittent fasting benefits and your regular every 3 hours of eating for those who are eating those small portion meals?
Very simple. And, you know, I constantly use the term metabolic health. And again, for those who haven't heard that term, that means your blood pressure is not where it should be. Your blood sugar is not where it should be. Your waist circumference is larger than it should be. 35 for women, 40 for men. That means your triglycerides are too high. Those are the fats, and the HDL, which is so-called good cholesterol, is too low. But metabolic syndrome, you have to have 3 out of 5 of those. I bring it up because when you hear things like insulin resistance, see, obesity and all this stuff is just it's a hormone problem, but the hormone is insulin. So when you are grazing all day, as suggested by one of the comments, Melanie Winston said, we're grazing, you're constantly having insulin spikes. Every time, I don't care what you eat, everything's going to cause a little bit of a spike, but if you eat a lot of starchy, sugary foods, it's going to be a big spike. It goes up, and when it comes down, not only are you going to, and then when it comes down, your body's going to start craving sugar again, because sometimes you overshoot. So you make too much insulin, so and you wonder why you're in a bad, funky mood, because your emotions are up and down, up and down. I want to be level all day long. So part of it is the information is wrong. They said, well, if you eat small, frequent meals, it's going to increase your metabolism, all this nonsense. Yeah, it's going to increase your metabolism because you got to get the furnace going with the food. You're going to burn the food. But what they found when they look at studies is that by the time you factor in how much you just ate, you may have increased the metabolism, but you're not gaining anything. So it doesn't make any sense. So what people have to understand is that most of this is driven by doctors being taught that, oh, because you're on insulin or because you're on glyburide or whatever medicine, we have to keep grazing so your sugar won't go down. What a backwards way of thinking. How about if we eat the right food and your sugar doesn't go up and you get off the medicine? How about that? And so we've been trained in a backwards way of thinking, which blows my mind. And we have to stop. That's why when you use nutrition as the foundation, and you guide people off. I had a patient that I treated last week on Friday. Hemoglobin A1C was 11. And she said, I'm tired, Dr. Hampton. I'm tired of being on this insulin. She had been on insulin for years. And I said, won't you try this dietary approach I've been preaching for the last few years? I checked it 3 months later, and her A1C was down to 4.4. Now, do you think that happened because of the medicine? And guess what? She's not taking insulin anymore. Imagine what that feels like to not have to take insulin anymore because you made a dietary decision. So we have to start using a little common sense. And any clinician who's listening to us today, if your patients are not healing, you need to do something different to help them heal. And medicines will never help them heal. It'll only keep things managed and under control. So nobody listening, don't stop your medicine. What I'm saying is that learn nutrition, start eating real food, not the stuff that's processed, and start paying, and then you're going to watch your numbers go down. Look at those labels. If you see a lot of sugar, then that tells you, or a lot of carbs. If the carb number is super high, divided by 4, it'll tell you how many teaspoons of sugar. 20 carbs divided by 4 is 5 teaspoons of sugar. So if you ate a 50 or 60 carb item and you're metabolically not healthy, you're probably going to not be able to tolerate that. So don't want to keep going on. I just want to say it's a very obvious mistake we made when we told people to eat all day. Your body needs to rest. And again, just like Dr. Mason said, nobody ate all day back in the past. Most of them ate once a day. The hunters and gatherers had to go get the hunt and gather. They didn't have time to eat. So by the time they came home, then and sometimes they would skip a day because you didn't come home. Daddy didn't come home every night because he was trying to go far away to find food. So we really have to learn from our past, and if we do that, we'll start healing, guys.
This is simply fantastic, as always. You know, Virginia Knight says, evening, everyone. Great day to be alive. We have another chance to get it right. Mel says, wow, didn't know fasting had so many benefits. Angela Underwood says, right. Your body is used to getting the regular eating time. Yolanda Williams says, sleeping is like a fast. Great information. Deborah Williams says, I just started today dieting for 60 days. Just eating salad and fruits, apples, oranges, and grapes. No pasta, no bread, no sweets. Will I see a big result before my wedding day? Dieting for a purpose. So that's what Deborah Williams. Go ahead, Dr. Mason.
Let me just say this. Diets don't work, period. Diets don't work. Let me tell you why. One of the problems with the diet is you set yourself up for failure, because many of us go on a diet, think of it as a project. That means it has a beginning and an end. And so when you set yourself up psychologically for that, I want to do this to lose X number of pounds. And even if whatever program you decide to go on is successful in having you do that, what do you do when you've met your goal? You go back to the very thing that you did, that you were doing, that created the need for you to go on the thing. So that's why I agree with my colleagues. Diet is the worst thing you can do if it is a project. What you should do is decide how you're going to eat to live every single day. And if we eat the right things, and I'm of the opinion, as Tony knows, I'm of the opinion that I don't have to worry about counting carbs when I'm eating mostly plants. All plants are low carb. I don't have to worry about sugar spikes. I don't have to worry about that. Plus, I get the benefit of the fiber that helps to create the healthy bacteria in my gut that helps me create the vitamins, some of the vitamins and other cofactors that I need to be healthy. And the other thing is we have our wrong physical images of what you're supposed to look like if you're healthy. People say, oh, you're too skinny. No, that's not a problem. I mean, the problem is you're too big. And so when I stand next to you, I look like I'm off, but you're really off. So what we have to do is we've accepted new norms in our society where we have given license for people to be abnormally shaped as another variant of normal. And that's not true. And we have allowed this sort of thing. And you've got, lastly, to one of my colleagues' point, to Dr. Hampton's point, doctors aren't taught anything about nutrition. I don't even now, and I've talked with the folks at the University of Illinois Medical School, because we were talking about the inclusion of a real nutrition program, not just talking about deficiency diseases like iron deficiency, anemia, and stuff like that, which is what we get. But when you get that bad, you got real problems. So we really do need to push for real nutrition and not nutrition programs generated by industry, the potato and the corn and all these other industries, the soft drink industries and what have you. But we know the people really do know what we should be eating, and we should be eating those things that are far more natural to us, and we wouldn't have these problems. And we wouldn't have, when you eat the sugar things, there's a lot of excitation that takes place. All you got to do is give some sugar to a little kid and you'll see what happens. They start running around like crazy. So what we need to do is stop making us think that this stuff is hard. It's not. They want you to think it's hard so they can sell you something. It's not hard. When I grew up, and probably Pete and some of the other, I'm sure Congressman Davis, we had a pot of beans all the time, some rice, and we had greens. And if you eat like that, If you eat like that, you won't really have it. Maybe some cornbread, so occasionally some small pieces of meat. And when I was growing up, but we didn't have. I went to grammar school with 500 kids. There wasn't one obese kid in my whole school.
Yeah.
There wasn't one obese kid in my whole neighborhood because all of us were out running around at the end of the day. So I don't want to get too stirred up on this because I just can't deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
It's like talking about health disparities. I can't talk about that anymore.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Dr. Mason, I think the more I would just want to encourage you to keep talking about it because we're so far removed from it that people are unaware of what it used to be like. And so we have to keep talking about it so that we can, to the best of our ability, normalize what used to be normal again. And part of that is, I mean, even though I know with my patients, I have only 15 to 12 minutes with them. And there's some part of me in the back of my brain is saying, get this person some medicine and get them out the room, right? But my ancestors is saying, you got to talk to them about what they're eating because I tell my patients all the time, I can't out-prescribe your lifestyle. Right. I can't do it. There's not enough medicine for me to outdo what you're doing every single day. And so many of them, they get it. And some of them are very surprised because it's like, to your point, they haven't heard this. I have some patients that are in my room with Cheetos, chips in the exam room. and I'm saying, well, tell me what you're doing here. And I have to acknowledge it because I figure I get more mileage out of that discussion than I do writing prescriptions, even though they need the prescriptions. And I'm still going to give it to them. But I got to have utilize this as an opportunity to say, why are you eating that? And when did that become part of the diabetic diet? When? Who taught that?
Yeah. I think the one thing I want to add is that there's two things I want to add. First of all, we got to stop doing abnormal things and expecting normal outcomes. That doesn't work. That's number one. Number two is that we do have to talk to them, continue to talk to patients about it. And the fact of the matter is that we have to spend more time discussing what they need rather than just prescribing, because then they begin to just assume that whatever you're prescribing is going to take care of whatever problem I got. And that is, that's a fallacy. It may help to, bring down blood pressure, but it doesn't get rid of the problem because, again, they're going to do, their behavior is going to counteract whatever you're prescribing. And so you'll end up prescribing more medicine and not really getting to the issue and solving the problems and making the patient better. So you do have to talk. And I think the first talk is really, my thing was always, let's talk common sense here. Let's because if we don't start talking about how you're behaving and what you're putting into your body, then none of these other things going to really matter that much in terms of your visit with me that day, because you'll go out, continue what you're doing, which is what got you here in the first place. And it just becomes cyclic. And we're going to continue to have the same old problem. The other thing is that, back to the intermittent fasting, common sense tells us that we need to stop eating at some point in time. And people didn't just, we don't just eat all day long. I mean, people didn't just eat all day long. I mean, that's common sense. But, and I understand the media, the advertisement, and all those things, and I understand the addiction part of it. But in order to be able to really help to change things, we're going to have to help people to overcome these kinds of problems, which is a big fight, because they're constantly bombarding and constantly advertising and constantly encouraging them to do things that's bad for them. Yeah. And so so the whole thing, I was always taught the best thing you can do is if you can teach somebody not to do it before they start doing it, But by the time that one grows up, they grow up with the same habits that their parents or with their colleagues or whatever surrounding that they're in. So they grow up with these same bad habits, which and then add on to that the encouragement by the media and the advertisement to do more. I mean, I used to laugh when I first started hearing the McDonald's commercial about supersizing. I mean, first you're eating bad food. Now you want them to eat more than eat more than what is necessary. And so but the big issue here that we have, if we're going to get healthcare and get people healthier, is we got to change their mindset, and we're going to have to help them to learn how to fight against what it is that's being thrown at them.
Mary Ballinger and Nellie King says, absolutely. Yolanda Williams says, growing up, we really didn't have a choice. Yeah, Mary Ballinger says, listening and hearing you because you are breaking it down to us and it makes us understand. Linda Johnson says, yes, keep talking. It's helping us to stay on track, or it's helping her to stay on track. Thank you for your truthfulness and your facts, Dr. Mason. The doctors on this panel don't play with words. They give it to us just as it is. We appreciate it. Lifestyle changes. Eat to live. Eat to live. Wow. And, Tamika Thomas says, hey, Uncle Terry. We got to make sure that we share Tamika's comment. She says, hey, Uncle Terry. Melanie Winston says, is breakfast in the morning necessary?
Only if you work for Quaker. And I'm not making that up. When I did my first book, I learned that in the late 1800s, food is the most, important meal did not come from researchers, did not come from clinicians. It came from industry. So those two companies, I had to call them out because those are the two companies. I have no problem with the people in the companies, but those are the two companies who started that falsehood. And when they started doing studies they started with mice. In the 70s, they did studies on mice, and they fasted the mice. Not only did the mice thrive in that setting, they lived 50 to 80% longer because they fasted. Now, we don't get the exact same results, but we do much better when we fast. So again, we always have to look at the source of the information, and what you found is that. So when you skip breakfast, in fact, that's what I find in clinic. People have to be given permission to do this because they've been told for years they got to keep eating and that breakfast is the most important meal. If you want to feel good, adapt to not eating breakfast, and your mental clarity will shoot through the roof, your energy will shoot through the roof. When you first do it, though, it's not going to feel comfortable because your body is accustomed to using sugar, starch, and things like that. Those highly refined cereal, that was your fuel. So if you don't feed your body these things, it's not going to like it at first. But then once you adapt to it and go through that little, I call it carbohydrate withdrawal. When you go through your withdrawal, going back to the addiction conversation, and once you've done that, then you actually feel better because now you're starting to burn that fat that you stored in your belly. That's what it was put there for. So you can use it for energy when you're not eating. And if you use that fuel, it's a cleaner fuel that will not make you feel, it doesn't go up and down like that insulin we talked about earlier. So absolutely, breakfast is not required for anybody. If you want to eat breakfast, just eat the right kind of food. But if you don't want to eat it, you do not have to.
Great. And thank you. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to say to Dr. Hampton's point, we as physicians have not been trained to do anything to improve the health of our people, of any people. We have been taught how to, we are the arbiters of medications, surgical procedures, and things of that nature. That's what we've been trained to do. So I don't want people to think that the doctors are doing something bad. It's just that that's not what we've been trained. There's been no significant nutritional training of any physicians of coming out of modern medical schools. It just has not happened. And when I was at U of I, along with other folks here, we had 40 minutes nutrition in 4 years of medical school. 40 minutes. So I'm just telling you that the nutrition is not what you're going to find from your doctors, because what we've been trained to do is measure something in your blood, give you something to make it go up if it's supposed to go up, or go down if it's going to go down, but it never does treat the cause of why that happened, because that's not what we've been trained to do. That's not our role in the healthcare system. Our role in the healthcare system is to be the arbiter of the drugs and the procedures. That's what we're trained to do. If I can't give you pills or other potions, then my job is the absurdity of letting people to get to be 400, 500, 600 pounds and thinking we're going to cure them with an operation to reroute their guts. And we see that on television. Yeah. We have television shows about that. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a place for any of that. I'm not saying there's not a place for it at some point. But to give people that kind of information, to put it out there as it is the miracle cure, and really, even though you make them lose weight before you have them do the surgery, they have to lose 50, 60 pounds sometimes before they become candidates. So you tell them they stop losing the weight so you can do the operation. And I've got friends of mine who do this kinds of what they call bariatric surgery. But I just think that we need to go back to some of the things that I've heard from Dr. Hampton and some of the other people on the panel. And that is, we got to go back to the days of common sense and realize, as has been stated, most of this stuff that we've been doing has been at the urging of of industry. And in our industry, and that's why I said what I said about the United States government, we could change this overnight if we wanted to, because what we've been doing is serving the needs of industry, not the needs of the people. We've been making sure that industry gets what it wants, because industry has been very integral in shaping what those policies ought to be. And it's not been for the benefit of the general public. It has been for the benefit of those companies Dr. Miller and others have mentioned, that names I could give, but I won't, because they make things like cheese and milks and different things like that. And these snack things. And we took the primary responsibility out of the kitchen in our house and put it in somebody else's kitchen when you don't know what they're cooking.
Yeah.
Wow. Dr. Jasmine, there was something you were trying to say?
You know, I was really going to add to, just when we think about, as we're talking about consuming foods, I see a lot of young adolescents and younger and pediatrics who have been diagnosed with prediabetes, right? And most oftentimes their parents have also been diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, most likely. And what I found is a lot of parents sometimes just don't have the psychoeducation and know. For example, I had a teen the other day who had acanthosis on his neck, which is like the dark lining on one's neck, and he was bullied, and they really thought it was a dirty spot on his neck versus acanthosis, which was a result of being overweight, right, or obese. So, I'm just talking about some of the struggles and difficulties that I found, but I also think it goes back to what Dr. Miller was saying, behavior, right, changes, the psychoeducation, the knowledge. And then once we give families, especially when we're thinking about brown and Black communities, that knowledge, some of us are not fortunate enough to have those resources available where you can get those available foods one way or the other, right? So, but I know Dr. Mason, it's about choice at the end of the day. So I know making that decision, I know we've talked about that previously on shows at the end of the day. So I just wanted to add that. So.
Oh, wonderful. So I had a little bout of a little laughter here, and I know some people were wondering what was so funny. And that's because a number of elected officials sent me pictures, who are listening today, sent me pictures of their refrigerators. They want to stay anonymous, but they want me to show the congressman tomorrow their refrigerators that are stuffed with snack packs of chocolate pudding and coleslaw, Hershey nuggets, and pops. And they are saying, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for keeping it real. And thank you for helping them. So they want the congressman to know the struggle they have with the stress eating, but they do not want me to share their names with you all. And we won't. But they did not mind if we shared the contents of their refrigerators, just to let you know that we are all in the same place working together. So, Dr. Mason, I think that's the notion for you to keep on talking about it, because you are helping them out here. You know, there's a number of other questions that we have in the chat in references, and I thank you so very much. And definitely we're going to get to all of those, but we're going to take our last question. And our last question comes from the chief of staff of the attorney general's office, the chief of staff of the lieutenant governor's office, our very own Mr. Charles Watkins, who's watching with us on this evening. And his question to the panel is, given the desperate low rates of COVID-19 vaccinations in communities of color, how concerned are you about the COVID variants and the possibilities of additional infection surges?
Yeah, I'll take it in the beginning. I think we should be very diligent and proceed with caution. So because I think India is a prime example that we cannot take a victory lap prior to winning the game. Okay, so I think we need to listen to science, look at local data, and remember the basic principles to mitigate the spread of the virus. So if you're talking about 10 variants or 100 variants, if we maintain one, social distance, two, washing our hands and surfaces, and wearing your mask, if you notice this year we have the lowest rates of influenza and pneumonia because of these sort of mitigating strategies that we have, that we employ for COVID, but it also worked in our favor for other known infections. Yes, there are strands there are variants that are out there. I think we should be cautious about them. I think there needs to be a sort of a global database so that we're catching whatever's going on in India right now. We need to know exactly what strand that is, because eventually that thing will end up in the United States. I think we need to share our resources. So if we're turning back vaccines here, we need to give vaccines over in Africa and India to places that are not as resource rich as we are, because that will help mitigate the infection there and hence help us. So my long and short of it is, be cautious, follow the science, and following the science means collect data. We want to know what variants is doing what and where, and then make those and get our vaccines ramped up to fight those variants.
Yeah, I just add to that is that I think we have to continue to be vigilant. Again, we have not achieved the victory yet, and so there's no reason for us to slow down whatever processes that we're doing to try to get people to a safe place. So whatever we can do to encourage and to educate people so that they can make the best possible choice, we need to get that information to them, and we need to make certain that now the issue of supply is not the issue now. The issue is making certain that people are making good choices. And so we need to be vigilant in terms of making certain that we are getting that information out there to give them what they need to make better choices than what seemingly is, the slowdown is occurring now, and people are having the hesitancy is coming out because again, you don't have as many people who are anxious to get it. But I think again, giving people the data, and I think we've seen that when people get good information, they make better choices and better decisions. I think that we have to continue that process.
I would only add to that very quickly is that I would like to see people have as much scrutiny about the food they put in their mouths as they do about these vaccines. I was talking to some younger people yesterday. When I say younger, I can say that now. These are people in their 40s and early 50s. And they are adamant about not taking the vaccine. And they want to give me this. And I just cut them off at the pass and said, I'm going to listen to you. But before you do that, do you know what's in that Polish you eat? Do you know what's in, do you know what's in a chicken nugget? Do you know what are in, and do you ask those questions? And if you don't ask those questions, then your argument to me about not taking the vaccine is crap. You know, it's not, you're not being serious, because the thing that the 29% of the Black folks that died, 29% of the people 29% of the population of the city of Chicago, which is African-American, accounted for 60% of the COVID deaths. And that wasn't necessarily just because they got COVID, but they had these comorbidities caused by these foods. And you cannot separate one from the other. And until we get past this and stop using that as your smoke screen that you put up, because why you don't want to take the vaccine, but you got a Polish in your hand, or you eating some other stuff. No, don't talk to me. Let's have a real conversation about what really health is about, and let us work together to get a better understanding of what's going on.
Well, Dr. Mason, so you just took them to church once again. You know, as we do on every Monday night, we're going to go around our round table really quickly, and we're simply going to ask you to share with us your thoughts until next Monday. So, Dr. Mason, what are your thoughts until next Monday?
My thoughts are that my prayer is that in some small way, that the knowledge that's been put forth by my colleagues here on this panel tonight and every Monday that we do this has in some way maybe not changed you completely, but really put you on a path to rethinking what you do. What Dr. Hampton, Dr. Pete, Dr. Searcy, and Dr. Miller, and we're all talking about, Dr. Graham, we're all just trying to give you information that you can use to live a better life. It's your life. Act like it.
All right, and Virginia Knight says that she takes notes on every Monday night couch conversation. And Melanie says it would be a great show if we talked about what was in our refrigerators. All right, Dr. Tony Hampton, you're until next Monday.
While we were having our conversation about vaccinations, I looked up, I had heard that San Francisco is doing really well. So I said, let me see if it's true. And I'm a data guy, and I encourage everybody listening to get your information from the right sources. So I had heard they had done well. I look it up, 26 cases today. I didn't say nothing about deaths. They only had 26 cases in San Francisco. The question is why? Because they have one of the highest vaccination rates in the country. That's why. So if you don't believe in science, don't listen to nothing I'm saying. But if you believe in science, if you ever been to San Francisco, it's a beautiful city. It is a huge city, and a whole lot of people live there. They only had 26 cases of COVID, no deaths. So look it up tonight, guys. We have to get vaccinated so we can get this herd immunity thing going. And I just encourage everybody to just give it a chance, because we are tired. I want to go to the movies. I want to go to a Bulls game. I want to get back to normal. And if you don't do it, then I can't do it.
All right. Dr. Jasmine, I saw you were nodding when you said, what's in your refrigerator? You're until next month.
You know what? I think that's a great topic or starter for the show next week. Honestly, that was actually a great pitch from whoever was listening and mentioned that. I would say to next week, definitely reflect on one thing that either one of the doctors have said on this show, whether it was even Nikki or Representative Davis, and just be mindful, reflect, think before you act, right? Maybe reflect on what's in the refrigerator, right? And reflect on, are we throwing a pity party? Perhaps if we're rethinking the vaccination, maybe we want to kind of reflect on the decisions that we're also making for our overall health. So just all about reflection. So that's what I would leave.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love it. Reflection. Dr. James Miller, you're until next week.
Hopefully, the information that has been given tonight is beneficial to someone. Hopefully, people are listening. And again, we're talking about scientific thing, but we're also talking about common sense. And common sense thing when when you're trying to solve a problem, there are procedures and there are answers that you can come up with. And you can't if you're trying to add, you don't start subtracting. So the whole idea here is that let us begin to use common sense in our daily in the way we conduct our daily lives. And common sense when we eat, common sense when we are dealing with the pandemic. I think if we and use information, common sense along with information, will allow us to make much better decision, which will give us a better chance to live longer and live healthier.
All right, live longer, live healthier. We are on. We have great marching orders here. Dr. Douglas Graham, you're until next Monday.
I really swung over and really like the idea of an anti-inflammatory diet. So when I go to the supermarket, I'm going to take a map and I'm going to look where things are. And it's my hunch that you'll find the good stuff on the outside and the bad stuff on the inside of the market. So I'm going to be careful where I'm going to be spending my time.
Oh, wonderful. Dr. Pete, you're until next Monday.
Yeah, so until next Monday, there's a term that we use in healthcare and medicine, and it's called shared decision making.
Yeah.
And that principle implies that the two parties that will be making decisions on behalf of your health is your provider and yourself. Don't give all the power away, okay? Because really the power is in with you. And that most of the, they got the 80-20 rule, the 80% is, the 20% drives, any 20% of the input drives 80% of the output. The 20% that controls the output is you. So I encourage you to listen to your doc, but to Dr. Mason's point, there's not a whole lot of nutrition stuff you're going to get from us, because that's not what we were trained to do. We were trained to manage disease, not to cure it. And so what I would encourage you to do is give your doctor a list of things that you eat and be honest. And you can circle the things, the low-hanging fruit that you're going to, I say low-hanging fruit, that's an oxymoron. But the things that you do that are just obvious and blatantly against your principles of better health. So I would encourage you to have that discussion with your provider and to take your responsibility for the shared decision making and make some decisions on your behalf of your health.
Wonderful. And right before we have our closing remarks from our congressman, as always, we want to remind you to do just a few things because we are so close to where we need to be. One is we want to remind you to wash your hands. Make sure that you wash your hands, wash them very vigorously, sing the birthday song, make sure you get all on those special places when you're washing those hands. We want to also remind you to wear your face coverings when you're in crowds and around people who have not been vaccinated. So remember to wear that face covering over your nose and your mouth as always. Keeping it over the nose and mouth, not just over the chin, not just over the mouth, but over the nose and mouth. And we also want to remind you to continue to social distance. Stretch those arms out. And if you are touching someone or they are touching you, just ask them to stand back just a little bit because we are so close. We are so close to being where we need to be. We also want to make sure that you stand up and mask up and stand up and get vaccinated. It is so important to get vaccinated. Health is true wealth. And the reason that we are here today and we have this platform to share with you as we get our closing arguments to tell you to join us next Monday night from our very own congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis. Who's muted? You're muted. You're muted, Congressman. Congressman, you're muted.
and reinforce something that Dr. Miller said. And he talked a great deal about common sense. Let me tell you, I must have spoken to at least 10 to 12 people on Friday who said they were not going to take the vaccine. They were not going. When we got ready to do the event on Sunday, I did a robocall in communities around COMED. And the phones, of course, immediately lit up. So I decided I'd stop doing what I was doing and try and help answer the phone. And I was shocked at the numbers of people who said, thanks, but no thanks. We appreciate what's being done, but I think I'm just going to set this one out. I'm going to do something. And I felt terrible in terms of recognizing that people have a right to their opinion, but they also have the right to be wrong. And they are violating other people's rights because all of us think we have a right to be in a healthy environment. And those who don't take the vaccine or make use of it, they're helping to maintain or create an unhealthy environment. And so it's not just for themselves. They don't have the right to jeopardize the health and the lives of others. So those of you who may out there think that you have a right to not get vaccinated, I often say that understanding democracy is understanding that my rights end where the next person's rights begin. That I have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but so do others. So I guess mine till next Monday is thanks to all the panelists, thanks to all the participants, but to all non-believers, please believe that the rest of us have a right, and we need you to help protect our rights, even if you won't protect your own health. So see you next week, and thanks again. It's been a good one, and I'm going and have my dinner.
Good night, all. Until next Monday.
All right.